3 months ago, the Clarity Act looked like a foregone conclusion. Prediction markets had it pegged near 80%. Wall Street was quietly pricing it in, and crypto Twitter was already drafting the victory laps. Washington insiders called it the bill that would finally drag American crypto out of legal limbo. But today, that same bet is a coin flip. Polymarket has slid to roughly 48%. The betting money is bleeding out, and there is a hard deadline in August that almost nobody is talking about out loud. If this bill misses the summer recess deadline, the next realistic window is 2030. So, the question I want to answer today is brutally simple. Did the safest bet in crypto regulation just quietly die, or is there still a pulse? To get there, I'm going to show you exactly how these odds collapsed, name the 3 blockers that are strangling this bill, and walk you through the August cliff that decides everything. My name is Lewis, and you're watching the Coin Bureau. Now, let's start with the proof that something genuinely broke. Back in May, right after the bill cleared a key committee, Polymarket had 2026 passage sitting somewhere between 74 and 82%. Today, it's at roughly 48% and still falling. That's a 30-point drop in under 6 weeks. And even institutional analysts are backing away. Galaxy Research cut its estimate from 75% down to 60% in early June. Their head of research, Alex Thorne, who had been one of the loudest bulls on this bill, now frames it as essentially a coin toss. A rival prediction market, Kalshi, is even darker. Short-term contracts for passage before the August recess have been trading in the low to mid-30s% range. So, look at what's actually happening here. The money is telling you a different story than the headlines. The industry rhetoric is still optimistic, but the people putting real cash on the line are quietly pricing in failure. And make no mistake, this vote decides whether the United States gets a crypto rulebook at all this decade. Which brings us to the obvious question. What does this bill even do, and why does it matter so much? Put simply, the Clarity Act answers the one question that has haunted this industry since 2014. Who actually regulates crypto? For over a decade, every project has lived in a fog. Is your token a security, which means the SEC, or is it a commodity, which means the CFTC? Nobody knew, because instead of writing rules, the SEC just sued people and let the courts sort it out. The Clarity Act ends that turf war with a statutory line in the sand. Genuinely decentralized assets like Bitcoin go to the CFTC as commodities. Tokens sold to fund a central team stay with the SEC as securities. And there's a path. A project can mature into a commodity status once its network meets specific decentralization thresholds defined in the bill's text, including open source requirements and limits on how much any single entity can control. Think of it as the second chapter of a 2-part story. The first chapter was the Genius Act, which wrote the rules for stablecoins, the dollar on the blockchain. Clarity is the market structure piece, the rulebook for everything else. This is the framework crypto has been begging for since 2014, and it was right there. The House already passed it back in July 2025 with a strong bipartisan vote, 294 to 134. So, if everyone wants it, why is it dying? Because of 3 blockers, and the first one is the messiest. Here's the part that turned a routine bill into a political minefield. On June 9th, the bipartisan ethics negotiations collapsed. A provision that would have let state attorneys general sue the Justice Department over ethics failures got pulled at the last minute. The White House refused to accept any language that specifically targets the president or his family. And to understand why, you have to follow the money. According to a Reuters investigation, the Trump family has added at least $2.3 billion to its fortune from crypto ventures since the start of the second term. Their holdings span a DeFi venture called World Liberty Financial, a meme coin, and a Bitcoin mining company. And here's the flashpoint. According to reports, an investment vehicle linked to Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the UAE's national security advisor, acquired a 49% stake in World Liberty Financial for roughly $500 million. Of that, an estimated $218 million was reportedly paid up front to entities tied to Trump's family and to Trump's Middle East envoy. So now, picture the conflict. The President of the United States stands to personally benefit from a bill he is simultaneously lobbying to pass. And on June 23rd, 5 Senate Democrats decided they'd had enough. Elizabeth Warren, Richard Blumenthal, Gary Peters, Dick Durbin, and Ron Wyden formally demanded congressional hearings and sworn testimony about that UAE deal. They called it, and I'm quoting, quote, unprecedented in American political history. Now, here's the part that makes this almost impossible to untangle. The man leading the White House's negotiations to fix the ethics rules is the White House crypto advisor, Patrick Witt, who answers to the president, who benefits from the bill. Is the fox negotiating the terms of the henhouse security system? Even the bill's strongest allies are defecting. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, one of the most crypto-friendly Democrats in the entire Senate, has flatly stated there is, quote, no Clarity Act without an ethics provision. When your own allies start drawing red lines, folks, well, the bill has a fatal structural problem. Now, before we get into blocker 2, a quick word. The market moves fast, and keeping up with both crypto and the wider macro picture is a full-time job. And if that sounds daunting, or you simply don't have 16 hours a day to sit glued to a screen, we've made it a lot easier. Right here on YouTube, you can now access the new Coin Bureau Club Lite plan. For just $10 a month, you'll get daily market updates across both crypto and TradFi. Our teams read on the best opportunities and curated updates with only the bits that actually matter. Just tap the join button below this video to get started. Now, back to it. If the ethics knot is the loudest blocker, the second one is the quietest and arguably the most stubborn. This is the DeFi fight, and it all comes down to Section 604. In simple terms, Section 604 protects software developers who write code but never touch your money. If you build a non-custodial protocol where users always control their own funds, you cannot be prosecuted as a money transmitter just for writing the code. The industry considers this absolutely non-negotiable. Over 60 CEOs and founders, from Coinbase to Uniswap to A16Z, signed a letter declaring it a red line. Their case is the partial conviction of Tornado Cash developer Roman Storm in August 2025, a coder found guilty on one count of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business, while the jury deadlocked on the more serious money laundering and sanctions charges. But here's the standoff. On the exact same day as those 5 senators, June 23rd, a coalition of law enforcement groups fired back with their own letter. The National Sheriff's Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the National District Attorneys Association, and more, representing over 70,000 members. Their argument is that Section 604 creates gaps in oversight, making it harder to trace criminal money, fight human trafficking, and enforce anti-money laundering rules. And this is where it gets genuinely deadlocked. 2 swing Democrats, Mark Warner and Catherine Cortez Masto, have tied their votes directly to law enforcement signing off on this language. Law enforcement won't sign off. The crypto industry won't water it down. So, picture the trap. The industry threatens to walk without it, but law enforcement refuses to give their blessing. That leaves the swing senators paralyzed, refusing to vote without police support. So, nobody moves. The bill does include $150 million to fight illicit crypto activity as a peace offering, but so far, it hasn't been enough to break the logjam. And that brings us to the third blocker, the one almost nobody in the headlines is even mentioning. That is the arithmetic. Before this bill can even reach the floor, 2 separate committee versions have to be merged into one. The Senate's Banking Committee wrote one, and the Senate Agriculture Committee wrote another, covering the CFTC side. Those 2 committees still disagree on fundamental definitions, like exactly which assets count as commodities. The Agriculture Committee is also distracted because it's simultaneously drowning in the 2026 Farm Bill. That merged text does not exist yet. Now, here's the brutal math sitting underneath all of it. To break a filibuster and force a floor vote, you need 60 votes. Republicans hold 53 seats. That means you need at least 7 Democrats. And how many Democrats are currently on board? Well, 2. Ruben Gallego and Angela Alsobrooks. And both of them are only conditional yeses, both tied to resolving the exact ethics and illicit finance fights we just walked through. So you're at least 5 votes short, and it might be worse, because 2 Republicans, Josh Hawley and Rand Paul, are expected to vote no. Lose those 2, and suddenly you need 9 Democrats instead of 7. This is precisely why there is no floor vote scheduled. You cannot schedule a vote you are guaranteed to lose. So now we've got the full picture. Between the poisoned ethics fight and the DeFi standoff, the vote math simply doesn't add up anymore, which is exactly why the calendar has become a guillotine. The White House originally wanted this signed by July 4th. That target is gone. Hill reporters called it logistically impossible weeks before the date even arrived. The real wall is August 7th. That's the last scheduled Senate day before the August recess. After that, senators go home. And when they come back in September, the calendar gets eaten alive by government funding fights and positioning for the November midterms. So, watch what happens if it misses that window. The 119th Congress ends in January 2027. A brand new Congress means the entire process restarts from absolute zero. It goes back to square one, from committee markups to floor negotiations. Then the 2026 midterms could flip the Senate. Then the 2028 presidential cycle swallows everything. And that is exactly why Senator Cynthia Lummis, the Republican champion of this bill, has warned that if August is missed, the next realistic window for comprehensive market structure reform could be 2030. Let that land. Not next quarter, not next year, 2030. And there's a real cost to that delay. Every institution is waiting on the sidelines for legal clarity. And if there is none, they'll keep waiting. For example, Standard Chartered projected somewhere between $4 and $8 billion in XRP ETF inflows if this bill passes and codifies XRP's commodity status. But that can only happen if the bill passes. So here's the honest read, and I have to be straight with you. 2 things are true at the same time. This bill is genuinely, seriously in trouble. With real blockers and ugly math, the clock is simply running out. But it is not dead yet. The odds are at a coin flip, not at 0. The bill is on the Senate calendar, eligible for a vote. And the political will to pass crypto legislation, in principle, still exists across both parties. The thing that's killing this bill isn't crypto. Nobody serious is arguing the SEC versus CFTC question is unsolvable. The thing that's killing it is a $2.3 billion conflict of interest, a fight between coders and cops, and a vote count that politics won't bend. In other words, the safest bet in crypto regulation fell apart because it got chained to unrelated political battles. So, if you're tracking this, here's exactly what to watch for over the next few weeks. First, watch the ethics provisions. If Patrick Witt's team can find compromise language that the White House actually accepts and that Gillibrand can live with, then the whole logjam could loosen overnight. Second, watch those 5 swing Democrats. If any of the names tied to the June 23rd letter start softening, the path to 7 votes suddenly reopens. If they harden, well, it slams shut. Third, watch Section 604. The single most important signal here is whether law enforcement gives any kind of sign-off, because Warner and Cortez Masto won't move an inch without it. And fourth, watch the leadership calendar. If Senate leadership doesn't force this onto the floor before August 7th, well, that's your answer. Silence on the calendar is the loudest signal of all. So, here's the question I genuinely want you to wrestle with down in the comments. Does the Clarity Act get rescued at the 11th hour? With a last-minute ethics compromise dragging it across the line before the August 7th wall? Or does Trump conflict, the DeFi standoff, and that broken vote math run out the clock and shove America's crypto rulebook all the way to 2030? Get highly opinionated about it because this one genuinely matters. Do you think that the swing Democrats fold, or do you think Warren's bloc holds the line? Let me know which way you're leaning and why. And if you want to understand the foundation this whole fight is built on, go check out our full breakdown of the Genius Act and how stablecoin legislation set the stage right over here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. This is Lewis, signing off.